Yummy cookies, one of my favorite baked goods. A cookie, simply defined, is a sweet baked good that is usually small and flat. The purpose of today's session is to discuss the science behind making cookies, including how the types and ratios of ingredients, how those ingredients are mixed, and then baked will affect the cookie characteristics of appearance, texture, and spread. But before we chat about the ingredients, let's take a moment to further define the 6 different types of cookies. Drop cookies are those made by just taking a spoonful of the cookie dough and dropping it onto the baking sheet. Chocolate chip and oatmeal raisin cookies are examples of drop cookies. Bar cookies are those that are baked on a thin sheet or pan and then later cut into bars. So think of pumpkin bars, lemon bars, or brownies. Molded cookies are hand molded or hand shaped cookies. They're shaped into various shapes, usually into balls. Sometimes other small simple shapes could be used. Peanut butter cookies and the Chinese almond cookies in our lab manuals are examples of molded cookies. Pressed cookies, such as Spritz cookies, are formed using a cookie press. If you look at the image in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, that's an example of a cookie press. Essentially, the extra rich or the dough that's very high in fat, it's a very stiff dough, is pressed or pushed through the cookie press to make the different shapes. Refrigerator cookies are those, again, that are a really high fat cookie that we will mix up and then shape into a log and then put them in the refrigerator to let that fat harden. Then the cookies are sliced from the roll and baked. Shortbread cookies or the pinwheel cookies there in the image and pecan sandies are all examples of refrigerated cookies. The final type of cookie are the rolled cookies, such as the gingerbread cookies or sugar cookies that we have for the different holidays. These cookies are rolled out on the countertop and then are cut out using different shaped cookie cutters. With this brief review of the different types of cookies, let's now shift our attention to typical cookie ingredients and their functions. The gluten protein in the flour will coagulate and provide for the rigidity or the firmness of the baked cookie. Usually all-purpose flour is used. However, if a more delicate crumb is desired, then a cake or pastry flour might be used in the recipe. Remember that the cake and pastry flour have a lower gluten potential than the all-purpose flour. Sugar provides for the sweet flavor of the cookie. A variety of sugars can be used, including the white granulated sugar, brown sugar, molasses, and/or honey. Secondly, the sugar aids in the browning of the cookie due to the caramelization of the sugar if the oven temperature is higher than 375 degrees, and then also due to the Maillard reaction. Finally, the sugar ingredient plays a role in leavening. When the fat and the sugar are creamed together, in that process, we are whipping air into the fat and sugar mixture, and that air later expands when the cookies are baked. The third ingredient is the fat ingredient. Usually it's butter or margarine. Sometimes it can be shortening as well, or a combination of 2 or 3 of those. The fat provides for the rich flavor of the cookies, as well as playing a role in the leavening when we cream together the fat and the sugar. The fourth ingredient are the eggs. Eggs provide the structure due to the coagulation of the egg protein. Eggs also provide a small source of liquid for a little bit of moisture in those cookies. Finally, the lecithin in the egg yolk serves as an emulsifier that will bring the butter into the mixture. Liquid. Cookies really do not have a lot of liquid. Sometimes there might be a little bit of milk added, maybe a little bit of a fruit juice. The liquid in terms of maybe if oil is used or a little bit of liquid from the eggs, but really cookies do not have a lot of liquid in them. The exception would be a bar cookie, such as a brownie. They tend to have more liquid added to them. Next are the chemical leavening agents. Cookies will need some sort of leavening ingredient, usually a combination of both baking soda and/or baking powder. These leavening ingredients produce carbon dioxide that expands when the dough is heated. Remember that when using baking soda for leavening, we're going to need to have an acid ingredient as well in order to produce that carbon dioxide. The most common acid ingredient in cookies is brown sugar. Final ingredient in cookies include the flavorings such as the vanilla or almond extract, and then any stir-ins that we might want to use, such as chocolate chips or mint flavored chips, butterscotch chips, maybe some dried fruit such as dried cranberries or raisins, coconut, different candies, maybe M&Ms, something like that. So those would be examples of stir-ins. And then also if we add salt, a little bit of salt will enhance the sweetness of the cookie, but it doesn't take much. So with that overview of ingredients, let's move now into the mixing of those ingredients. The conventional mixing method is most commonly used for cookies and cakes. This method starts with the creaming together of the fat and the sugar. And to cream, you essentially just mix together the fat and the sugar until the mixture is light and fluffy. During the creaming process, air is incorporated into the butter, and then the sugar holds that air in place. When the fat and sugar are creamed, or after the fat and sugar are creamed, eggs are then added to provide some liquid, as well as that lecithin found naturally within the egg yolk. And that lecithin will start to emulsify the fat in the butter. The final step varies slightly for cakes and cookies. For cakes, the dry ingredients are added alternately with continued mixing. In cookies, since there isn't much liquid, the dry ingredients are added at the same time, and then the mixture is continued to be beaten. The stir-ins, such as the dried fruit, chocolate chips, etc., are usually hand stirred in at the end as to not break up the chocolate chip or the dried fruit. So how many of you have taken the time to evaluate a cookie? Usually it's just yummy cookies, but if you were to evaluate cookies, you would most likely look at these 5 criteria. So first, we have the appearance of the cookie. We would look for a nice golden brown, okay, usually, with a top that is slightly rounded towards the center. The type of sugar used can contribute to the degree of browning of the cookie. For example, if a darker brown sugar or molasses is used, then we can expect a darker colored cookie. Also, interestingly enough, a little bit of baking soda also helps aid in the browning, just a little bit. Second, if we were to break open a cookie and examine its middle, we would like to see a uniform distribution of small gas cells with thin cell walls formed when the air, the steam, and the carbon dioxide expanded evenly during the baking. So if you look at the picture on your slide there, okay, really get in there and look closely. You are going to see some of those small gas cells. Okay, and it's really a delicate image there. Third, we have the tenderness of the cookie. And the tenderness should be characteristic of the cookie. So sometimes we want the cookie to be crisp or soft or chewy. My favorite is crispy on the outside and soft in the middle. That's my favorite. So when we look at tenderness there, the tenderness of the cookie varies with the amount of fat and sugar in the dough. Crisp cookies are usually made from a mixture that is high in fat and/or white granulated sugar, whereas softer cookies have a higher proportion of brown sugar or honey. Additionally, cookies baked at a lower temperature, so say 325 degrees Fahrenheit, for a longer period of time, maybe 15 to 20 minutes, tend to be more crispy as more water is given the chance to evaporate and thus dry out the cookie. Chewy cookies have a higher sugar, liquid, and egg content, but a lower fat content. The fourth characteristic there is the flavor. When we think of cookies, we think of a sweet flavor, but really each cookie has its own different characteristic flavor, but most cookies are sweet. Then finally, we have the cookie spread. And the cookie spread essentially is how far the cookie spreads out during the baking process. And this is most influenced by cooking the cookies in a cooler oven, and a cookie that has a higher proportion of sugar. Also, a third feature there would be cookies where we are using a cake or a pastry flour. So those lower gluten potential flours will increase the cookie spread as well.